What is going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indy Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by Nick McDaniel. Nick, it was a full weekend. How you feeling this fine morning?
I'm good. I believe it or not, I was a little sore on Monday, standing on that concrete all Sunday. But we'll get to that whole situation, I'm sure. But other than that, man, feeling good. I mean, it actually seems like it's a lighter week, maybe, so the shows may not be super heavy. The problem is there's lots of stuff to talk about.
Yes, there is a lot of stuff to talk about. And fans, if you want to follow everything we're talking about, you need to go to patreon.com/tappedoutpod is where you can get the shows early. It's also where you can sign up for a free account to make sure you get the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight every single week. It's where we look at the shows that just happened and the shows that are coming up, and we dig a little deeper into some other things as well. Also, again, you're getting the shows early. A big thing this week of why you want to become a paid member is the show notes. The show notes are pretty copious this week, especially when we get into our champions list. We cannot cover them all. It gave me great anxiety looking at that long list of promotions and champions. But again, if you want to get access to that, again, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Let's jump right in. You and I went to 2 shows this weekend. Myron went to 3 shows. We were in Royston, Georgia, Friday night for SCA Spectacle. Over the last couple of months, they've kind of done this thing where every couple of months they do what they're calling a premium live event, and that's what Friday was. The question, Nick, was how was the spectacle?
Dude, they delivered. Kudos and round of applause to all the parties involved. Now, look, I know a lot of people aren't happy with the results, the end, how the show ended. But as far as here's my case. The number we were getting at one point, I know we counted and some more people came in, so a number went out. So the final number that's kind of come out is around 150 in that ballpark. So on an average Friday, they essentially doubled their crowd on this show. Like, I know they're up around 100 pretty regularly, but if it's 75, 80 and they jump to 150,
yeah.
We talked about, there was a great controversy about this vignette thing that they shot at Viral and whatever. And I guess at the roundabout way, it's like, look, I'm not saying that was the reason. Mm-hmm. We will probably go into some of the reasons why.
Right.
But you have to say that the steps that they did and the process that they followed to get there was a success to get to that house.
You also had the return match of Luka Daniels, who'd been out for 6 months and had been a pretty major player there. And even during his injury had remained a major player there at SCA between doing commentary and inserting himself in various things. And so there were people there to see Luka's return match. So a combination of things, no matter what the number ends up being, it was a great crowd. And before we get into like the booking of it, we went to 2 shows. We went to a show Friday in Royston, Georgia, that did not have any big names on it. It had a Georgia crew that's just been plugging away. Sunday night, we went to a show basically in downtown Atlanta, in the middle of Atlanta, with some major stars on their show, some great talent, several rappers who were there debuting music. And you want to talk about culturally different ends of the spectrum, and both those shows essentially drew the same amount of people. And I say all that, and I don't know if there's a question in there. I'm just processing all of that.
There's not a question there. There's a Patreon video probably in there somewhere. Literally. We had a lot of conversations about it. I have reasonings. Maybe not to spoil too much of it. If we decide to do the Patreon video, let's start there. It would be one of the reasons is I feel like SCA kind of, you know what? Hold on. I'm just going to correct myself mid-sentence. I was going to say they're in two different situations where one, like, look, we love AWE, and we're going to talk about them here in a minute. They are in a phase of their brand where we, I said this to somebody who actually it's their, I said it to Josh. I said, when they went back from Southern States to AWE, I'm like, look, you have a brand confidence issue, and it's going to take you a while to put some new paint on that and fix it, and build it back up to where people are, back on board with AWE. I was going to say SCA doesn't have that problem, but let's all be honest. They're farther down the line of that same issue because they had, a couple years ago, they had that brand, issue.
Right.
Upping that building specifically. And now they've rehabilitated that, and became like now to where they're at the same stage. It's pretty unique when you think about it. I did not think, I literally thought of that as I was speaking.
Yeah.
But it's a really unique situation. I think they have, as different as it may seem on paper, in reality, there's a lot of similarities in those two situations.
Yeah. It is. It's funny you mentioned that. You have two promotions that have had to go through some rebranding, and build. And I think they did it in two different ways. Oh, maybe this is picture. You had one promotion, SCA, that built around a stories, whether it was Towers Really Long, Tidal Reign, or the emergence of Apocalypse. Whereas AWE, where is AWE at right now if they did not hook their wagon to Carly Bravo?
Let's save that. That's in the notes. I do want to get to that. Yeah. I will get there. Let's focus, for a minute. Let's focus on the SCA issue. And I think you're right. I think the strength that they did is they showed commitment and dedication to the process, and just said, look, we're going to build these stories, and we get it. It's going to take some time, and we'll just chip away. We'll put the work in every single Friday. And they've done that. And now, look, and a lot of people, like, it's a lot of pressure. Like, a lot of people are going to go, yeah, but they won't draw 150 at the next show. Okay, let's say they draw 100. Guess what? Every big show typically has a spike, and then the other shows are a little bit lower. Back in the day when pay-per-views were a thing, WrestleMania was always a spike head and shoulders above the rest. All the other pay-per-views were a little low. So that's going to happen. And, oh, by the way, the difference between, like, even a pay-per-view or a WrestleMania, compared to, like, a Raw was night and day. So I'm just proud of the guys. They've slowly, like you said, they committed to it. They put in the work and done a great job. And at the end of the day, as far as the actual show process goes, Spectacle was a success.
100%. One of the things, here's the thing. Again, tale of two cities here. You had basically Spectacle ended in stunned silence. The crowd did not know what to make, and the crowd was kind of lingering. And Blake Blackwell, is that it? Blake Blackwell? Am I saying that right? Comes over and says, hey, we need everybody to clear out because we got to figure out what we're doing. And he sounded despondent because the Apocalypse won. They have controlled the promotion. They've already changed the name to Apocalypse Pro Wrestling. They won in convincing fashion. And I even said, booking-wise, leading in, I'm like, man, it seems like they're giving away Feltner versus Johnson awfully early. That match was not needed. That match did not happen because Apocalypse dominated. They won 3 of the 4 matches clean. Scott Mason, he and Caleb Crocker had a pretty even match. And then the final minute and a half, Scott Mason just shut Caleb Crocker down, hit 3 big moves, And as he pinned him, the entire crowd was like, they knew Caleb Crocker had to win to make that fifth match happen. And I'm so glad we went to that show, because there's not a whole lot of moments like that where the crowd's just like, what just happened?
Right.
In a good way. In a good way.
In a good way, yeah. They were invested. They were really invested. And the crowd, like you said, they were just in shock that it happened the way it did. And then for, them to jump Jonathan Feltner in the ring, and then, JJ to give them the match because he didn't want to keep it from the people.
Right.
It's a different thing. And by the way, we always talk about the heel authority and how that works out or whatever. Sometimes this is the hard part of the process now, is like figuring out what you're going to do from there. So I'm excited to see kind of where they go forward.
I want to be very careful how I say. We saw another promotion a year ago have a match where the heel authority won the match. Then you and I spent the next 11 months questioning what in the world was going on with that storyline, because the heel authority was not exercising any authority.
I can promise you, John the Body Johnson is going to, flex his authority. I mean, that definitely will be part of the issue that they have to deal with.
Yeah. So I think you're exactly right. I think they know where they want to get to. I think they know what the fans are clamoring for, and they're going to make them wait for it. But you still got to fill in week after week after week.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? And to be honest, like, the NWO was one of the greatest storylines of all time until Eric joined the NWO. And then they're doing like NWA's. Then you're kind of like, okay, what's really happening? If the boss is the heel, then anyway, we're invested. We're invested, and kudos to SCA. Great crowd. They've worked hard, and they earned the success that they're having. Sunday, I'm getting ready to leave my house and come down toward Atlanta, and the phone starts blowing up with you guys. We start getting messages that the cops have shown up at RIPW just a few minutes away, less than 10 minutes away from where we're going to be for AWE show. And the cops have shown up at RIPW asking for a variety of permits. And this show did not happen. It was shut down. Multiple Facebook posts trying to explain that the cops showed up, left, came back. It's a very strange situation. We have gone through about 17 conspiracy theories about who did this and why did they do it. And one of the questions in our show notes, obviously, who do we think called the cops? But also, are we digging too deep into this because we just like conspiracy theories?
Yes and yes. I mean, that, literally, I always tell sometimes, and in most cases, I would tell people the simplest answer a lot of times is the answer.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not taking a stance on who called, because we have had people call us and say it was this person, it was this person, it was this person, and then in the midst of the conversation, you find out there's just a tenant that apparently won't let it go. And so we kind of asked ourselves, do we want to go down the rabbit hole of why we think it? I mean, that's the question, right? It's like, we'll save the other one. Like the most logical choice. Now, how this person got in, how they got started in period, I don't know.
Right.
It does just make most sense that this tenant is the one that just kept call and would not let it go. And here's my logic. I'm not saying this is what happened, folks. This is what I'm saying. Let's look at the scenarios, and start with the easiest one, in my opinion, which is the tenant. Why would she not let it go? I said, well, one, apparently this other tenant was running an event.
Yeah, same day.
Okay.
Right.
Same day, same time. So parking was going to be a problem for her, supposedly. And then I said to you, I was like, hey, man, I was literally just listening to an episode of 83 Weeks where this kind of makes sense too. People, like, look, we're in the wrestling bubble. We love everybody in wrestling. Like, that's kind of our thing, right? That's not us specifically, like wrestling people, like fans and blah, blah, blah. Outside of wrestling people, the general casual public, not everybody has a high opinion of wrestling fans.
No.
There's a stigma with wrestling fans. So if this lady is doing an event and hear me out, if she thinks a bunch of ladies are coming to this event of hers, I don't know what the event was. I'm not claiming to. But let's say a bunch of ladies were coming. Maybe she's just like, wait, I'm going to have my people coming to my event are going to have to deal with wrestling fans.
Mm-hmm.
Again, insert stigma of wrestling fans into that.
Right.
If she thinks that's what her people are, it literally could, in her brain, I'm thinking, like, from her perspective, could ruin her event. Like, right. she got a big event, bunch of people come, and the next time she tries to do one, they go like, I'm not coming back because I'm not dealing with that again.
Yes. Plus, you have a tenant there who they're there week in, week out, running whatever they're doing, and you have a wrestling event that's just maybe a one-off to see if
I think that was going to be their monthly. I think they were going to run there for you. But even then, at once a month, she's like, hey, this is my build. Like, I'm here.
Right.
So, yeah.
I'm going to tell you why I don't think it was, as I've thought about it this morning and preparing for the show, I don't think, and I may be wrong, but there's a couple of reasons I agree with you, and I don't think it was a wrestling person. And if I don't think it's a wrestling person, the other tenant is the logical.
Well, she has the most to lose out of all of this.
Right. I don't think, you and I did a little digging. And at first I searched for City of Atlanta ordinances. Because this has, let's be very clear to the casual fan. This has nothing to do with State Athletic Commission. This is all business, occupancy. This has to do with, whatever you would call it, business laws,
city bureaucracy. You can say,
city stuff. This was the city of Fulton. Would a wrestling person even know who to call? Like, if a wrestling person is trying to shut this down, a wrestling person would think, okay, how can I, what could we do with the State Athletic Commission? This isn't MMA. Whereas, Gary Lamb, somebody's trying to rat him out.
Apparently, they were saying that they were told that they thought they said it was an MMA, and that's what kind of got the ball started. Right. And then when they figured out it wasn't, here's the other thing. I'm not saying she did or didn't. Here's the other part. This is so early. This is like our way too soon to be 100% accurate reporting. Yes. The other thing I look at it. Let's say she had to get some permits.
Yes.
She might just be mad that maybe, hey, they probably didn't do it, so I'm going to start them and find out if they did to get them out of my event. Again, I just feel like she had the most inconveniences.
Right. Yes.
Now, so let's stop there on that aspect. Then let's flip the coin and go, let's say it was a wrestling person. The only thing I have is, was it dirty pool? Is all fair in love and war,
right?
And in indie wrestling, apparently, a lot of people call it war. We've seen posts that said it was.
Yeah.
Like, literally, the wording was, it is war.
Okay. Yeah, and let's be very clear. If you are going to talk like that, if something happens, like this happens, where a show gets shut down, you've just made yourself the number one culprit.
Correct.
And if you're a wrestling person and it comes back that it was you may not be a wrestling person any longer because of they took money away from the boys on Sunday.
Yeah. If that was true, whoever did it, they took money away from those talents on the cards, et cetera, whatever. But here's the thing. The only thing I disagree with you, this is something I've been It's one of those, like, you ever have a line that you want to say that you're just like,
Yeah.
I just need the right moment, and this is it. Where you kind of said, like, oh, well, if it was a wrestling person, they won't be a wrestling person. I completely disagree, and I'll tell you why. Like in life, like in the real world, pro wrestling, I have discovered, it is so cliquish and what I mean by cliquish, I mean, I
Right.
don't mean that in a negative connotation. I just mean everybody has their groups, their friends, their boys that they run with. I don't think there's anything you could hardly tell them that would make them change their mind on those
No,
people.
that's true. And there would be some people, if they found out who did it, they'd want to work for that person. Oh man, you shut that show down. Yeah, I want to. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a weird. I mean, I think you're right on
Look,
that.
I'm going to steal your thunder here and say something you said, though. The problem is, if you didn't have the permits that you were required to have, that's the if part. Because again, I've had one person tell me, no, that's not accurate, that permit wasn't necessary, and if they knew their business, they wouldn't have been in that situation. You could have argued your way out of it. I was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe not, who knows. But maybe if you legit did need all those permits, that comes back to, like, man, you just got to know your business, and you got to maybe have somebody that's all they do. Because if you legitimately got shut down, even if you were snitched on,
Yeah.
if you didn't have the permits, they had every right to shut you down. That's the problem. Another problem that you face.
Yes. Yes. Is at the end of the day, it stinks. It's bad. But everybody that's pointing fingers today, if we're being honest and we're being harsh, you shouldn't be pointing the finger at the tenant. You shouldn't be pointing the finger at the police. You shouldn't be pointing the finger at the imaginary conspiracy, whoever. You point the finger at the person that was in charge. Because, like you just said, if they had everything they were supposed to have, the police would have gone and told whoever complained, hey, everything's in order here. They've got all their permits. They're good to go.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a simple thing. We ran a show for the city of Seneca one time. We were running it. It was part of their big festival, and we were running it in one of the city gyms. And they said, hey, you've got to get $1 million insurance policy for this show. And that was not something we typically did, but we had to do it. We had to have signed proof of that. We had to show them all of our paperwork that normally you don't show a venue, as far as permits and waivers from the wrestlers and all this. And hey, this is the wrestlers' license numbers, because the city didn't want any blowback on anything. We jumped through the hoops. And sometimes, if you're going to run a business, and wrestling is a business, you got to jump through those hoops. And if other people, especially this is true in South Carolina, if you have wrestling promotions who are jumping through all those hoops, getting their licenses, all that, and they find out promotions are running illegally, let's call it what it is, outlaw, whatever you want to call it, there's probably phone calls made. And then I'm rambling, but if you're dealing with the athletic commission, the cops aren't involved. It's just a bureaucrat. But if it's a city permit, that is a police thing. So
and by the way, I do want to disclaim, we're not saying they didn't have everything, because we don't have all of that information.
Right.
It was just made into a situation. And I know they ended up being, it was like, hey, it was something the building, the landlord hadn't done, and that's how they fell into the trap. And I'm like, I'm still coming back eventually of like, hey, if you're running, especially when you move to a new venue, maybe there's a checklist that you go through and go like, hey, go to the landlord and say, like, do you have your permits for X? Do we need the permits for this? Do we need this? Do we need insurance? Like, go through all of that checklist. And by the way, there are plenty of people in Georgia that I could kind of say, like, hey, this is the guy that I would call, because he runs a bunch of different venues and he makes sure he has all of his stuff. So maybe just hit him up and see what might surprise you out of the blue, and don't let those things surprise you.
Yes. I mean, we just saw a very similar situation with the Georgia award show that had to change venues. I guess that was 24 hours ahead of time, because the venue they were using required insurance. They didn't know, whatever, and they had to move venues. So we hope We expect RIPW to come back again. They were coming back with a vengeance, with some big matches, with the streaming service, and so we'll see. We'll see what's next for them. We're waiting to hear some announcements. We did mention we went to AEW on Sunday night at Med in Moulton,
AWE, but
Indy.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, AWE. Sorry.
It's that Freudian slip, man. That is the hard since All Elite Wrestling came out, dude. It is the most difficult. It's just because one rolls off the tongue, man. We all do it at this point.
Yeah. This was by far the biggest crowd they've had since the comeback. The question is, are they really back?
We're gonna tell. I mean, honestly, man, we are going to. Time will tell. And like I'm gonna hop around the notes a little bit or whatever. Like here, my statement is this: is two things can be true. Mm-hmm. Man, I tell you, man, I can't be happier for them that they 150 people in that building, in that room, watching the show. But the other part is, man, they have well, they probably do. Let me back up. I was gonna say they have no idea. They probably have full idea of how much pressure now is on their shoulders. They have got to keep it up. They have got to retain some of that crowd. It's the same thing we talked about with SCA. This is kind of how these two when we talk about the parallel lines, sometimes they're moving on. Mm-hmm. If they fall back to 50, mm-hmm. then the question marks return quickly. And but that's it. That's the brand confidence issue that we talked about.
Right.
It's the hey, was it the rappers that drew the crowd? Was it the look, I hope at the end of the day we're all like, no. It was the wrestling, and look, by the way, the Jimmy Rave Cup being the next show will answer that question, I think.
Right.
Because that will draw that wrestling fan base. So it depends. Look, the next two shows are crucial, in my opinion, because I think one might be an overreaction, but if you take the next two shows and kind of see how they do as a whole, I think that's the answer to are they back? One show doesn't make you back.
That's right.
One show is a successful show, multiples in a row. Okay, now you're back.
The good thing for AWE, they have room to grow in that building. They could easily double in size and get to 300. And if I'm them, that would certainly be my goal, and certainly in that area of Atlanta, so close to a major metropolitan area, you would think that would be easily doable. You and I've never been to a Classic City show where they've got the mix of the music and the wrestling, and it's a little bit of everything. This kind of had that vibe. Like you and I said at the very end, I feel like I showed up to kind of just like a gathering that had some rap and some entertainment, and like there just happened to be a wrestling show there.
Yeah, and it was like, and then that's when I kind of made the joke of, hey, is this Classic City to a different demo? Mm-hmm. I mean, like, maybe that's what it is. And look, Classic City seems to see like they're making the model work. There's nothing wrong with like, hey, if that's working for them, let's try this and go forward. Now again, we don't know, is this going to be a like repeated thing? Was this a one-off, or are they going to have music at all their shows? So, I mean, or is it going to be some of the shows? Kind of their big shows. We'll see. But yeah, it was different. It was, but like as far as the wrestling show itself goes, I thought it was great. There was lots of stuff I really liked. Like with every show, we always make jokes. There's like one match that I'm like, all right, I probably could have lived without that one.
Right.
But a lot of times it's because storyline, like I don't know why it's there. Typically, there's a reason why it's there. Most of the time, sometimes it's just there. But in general, like I said, the show itself, I'll let you run with it because that's the next topic of like I couldn't explain. There were a lot, like the wrestling itself. I was like, dude, that was a really good match.
Yes.
That was a really good match. That was a really good match. But why was I still confused at the end of the show?
Alexis Littlefoot, we've seen her multiple times at AWE, and she continues to improve. And her match with Kelsey Reagan exceeded my expectations. Her finisher, which was like a curb stomp, leg drop. Um, they put in those ladies put in some good work, as did everybody. We'll get into more of the details of the show, but as we're watching the show, it felt like you had a non-wrestling crowd who really didn't know you had groups of people literally standing in front of the entranceway, blocking the entrance. So there were many of the wrestlers who are coming through the curtain, and they've got to walk around this group of people that don't know. They don't know any better because it felt like it was a non-wrestling crowd, and there were people there was constant moving from the start of the show to the finish. There was never a time where everybody was just sitting still watching the wrestling. There felt like, and for a middle-aged guy who has raging ADHD, I was like, what is happening? What is it? What is this? What is this?
Yeah, no, I did make the comment. Like, it was a great show, but I've never been to a show that I was more distracted at.
Yes.
I really don't.
You had people going out the back door to
there were
some fresh air.
Yeah. But there's just I always tell people, like, it's one thing for like a person to be like moving around to go to the concessions or whatever. There were just swarms of people shifting and moving and getting more comfortable and moving around to different areas. And like you, I'm very like, all right, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I was like, so I was just distracted, which was, but meanwhile, Sal and Caleb Conley are just crushing it in the ring,
Yes.
So, yeah, but the card was great. Like, that's it. I mean, it sounds like we're like nitpicking the show. I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm nitpicking something. But the show itself, like, I was really happy from beginning to end as far as the actual wrestling show.
Yeah, there was not a bad match on the whole card. All of the matches delivered, including Carly Bravo getting the big win, unifying that title, the undisputed unified Georgia Wrestling Crown, taking out Shane Marks, who was I had never seen Matt Hankins live that I can remember. Maybe at Anarchy back in the day. That was a real treat. It felt like a goodbye, and it's very clear, and Carly Bravo knows he has put this company on his back and taken them back. It's in the notes here. You had Chip Day, who was gone the last 6 months of the year. He addressed that in a great promo he and Ethan Case had against each other. Joe Black was he and Murder One carrying the tag team division. You had Alexander Lev, who wasn't quite there yet. They've built him to that, and I'm excited for the Lev Bravo match that's coming. But Carly Bravo, in a time of shifting sands, he became that rock. He became that steady force there, and they went.
I'm going to say something, and this is no disrespect to anybody that I'm about to mention, because I'm going to explain it all out. So you got to get to the end, folks. If you don't have Carly Bravo there to make the flag bearer for AWE and winning that title, that's where in the notes I specifically wanted to say, who's the guy? Because here's your problem. We talked about it was the brand confidence issue, and they built something back, and it needed to be different. Joe Black is an amazing champion. He is a champion at Southern Honor. He's the tag team champion. There, everywhere Joe goes, he wins the title, and nobody. Like, I always tell people, he is a great model, like, as far as, like, if you want a guy that you could put your belt on that people are going to go, oh, that's a legitimate guy, it's Joe Black. The problem was, I didn't feel like when AWE started again, Joe Black could be your champion, because then it felt exactly like we were back with AWE like it always had been. And if you're trying to rebuild the brand, you got to make something different. And Carly Bravo coming in and becoming their champion legitimately made it look different. Does that make any sense what I was saying?
Yes, absolutely. And you have Carly Bravo, who has not been the guy in Georgia ever in his career. He's been, part of a group, part of a tag team, but this has been his opportunity to shine, and he has taken that baton and he has run with it. And it all started back with that post, hey, I'm coming to get y'all.
And from that moment on, Carly Bravo, I told everybody, Carly Bravo is the best, if he counts, in the system, if he counts. Carly Bravo's best wrestler in Georgia right now, and I think his 5 titles kind of proves that. There's nobody out there that, so from the time he came back and he was basically hitting all these shows, I feel like he's head and shoulders above, everybody else at the moment. I think he's got somebody coming sooner than later. We're going to have something maybe potentially in this week that'll open that door. But, yeah, he's the man. And I think Carly Bravo is a huge reason. Again, no disrespect to anybody on the roster. I think Carly Bravo is a huge reason. Sometimes, why? I'm not comparing the two. Hear me out. But this is kind of my indie level analogy. When AEW started, All Elite Wrestling started, Chris Jericho to me was the most important hire they made.
Mm-hmm.
Because look, Cody Rhodes wasn't Cody Rhodes yet, folks. I know a lot of people think he was. He was not Cody Rhodes yet.
Right.
They needed somebody to legitimize the brand, and Chris Jericho was that guy. Carly's doing that. Does that make sense? On the indie level, he's I think he did with that AWE, Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment spot of putting him in that spot, did kind of the same thing for them that Chris Jericho did for All Elite Wrestling. Just my take, but what do I know?
Yeah, I think it was just perfect timing. I think, as we mentioned before, all these things were happening because if Chip Day's available, it's quite possible Chip Day's the champion.
Mm-hmm.
And if Chip Day's the champion, do they do what they do Sunday night? Does that fit? Does that understand? You understand what I'm saying?
I think you get. Listen, I've stood face to face with Chip Day and said, when he is motivated and focused, he's right there at the top.
Right.
He's part of why I'm excited when I said there's somebody that's coming, that could open that door.
Right.
He's that guy. But my point was, it's the same problem that I said with Joe Black.
Right.
If Chip Day or Joe Black were your champions, it's still it's the same. Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment, they had the brand confidence issue.
Right.
That's why you needed somebody kind of from outside that system.
Well, what I meant was, if Chip Day's your champion, do you have a rap album release?
I think so.
Okay.
I
think with Carly Bravo, though, because of his background in rap and different things, I think it elevated. I think it
did.
Everything elevated, and there was energy, no question. There was energy. Great pop for Carly Bravo. Yeah. So, the bad thing about wrestling, what's next? You got to there's no finish line. You got to keep going. So they've already announced, I think they announced 2 shows in March, and then Carly Bravo versus AJ Francis in early April. So they're not taking the foot off the gas, and we'll see what's next.
Yeah.
This weekend, Friday night, Disruptor Wrestling returns to the Tannery Row Ale House in Buford, Georgia, where they made their comeback last year. This is a very intriguing card. We'll go over it more on the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight. The main event is the new Disruptor champion, Zicky Dice, defending against Alan Angels. They have a variety of titles. They've got talent on this show you can't see anywhere else. My question is, Disruptor, from the beginning, they said we're running a season, and we're basically not running after September, October. We're not competing with football. Did that help them as they get ready to relaunch in 2025?
It's funny that we always a lot of times when we ask these questions, we're like, I'll let you know on Saturday morning. Because Friday night, we'll see, how they draw and, how that is. But I do really love the card. You talked about it. I mean, the card is stacked. I'm really excited about that. But to answer your question, I think so. I think a lot of people are refreshed. I think a lot of people, it's like, okay, Let's get off to the races, and then we're going to run through. There are some major news, announcements coming out of Disruptor here over the next few months. That's not my place to announce. If they tell me to announce them, I will, but otherwise it's theirs to announce. I know they put out there, people have already seen, it has been announced, the Lucha Extrema shows and that kind of stuff are coming. But it's different. To wrap it up, the season format is different, and I think a lot of people knock it because they don't get it. They're just used to running. But if we'll see how they draw over the next, season and stuff like that. I think, but Friday will answer a lot of the questions. Was that refresh good for them?
Yeah, they've got some big things in the hopper, some major things, and we're excited to continue to cover Disruptor Wrestling and get out to some of their shows this year, because it's really unpredictable. And I think they lived up to their name. I think they were a disruptor, because I think they did some things that other people took note of. Some of the talent they booked, some of their strategies, their social media.
We made a joke about Ben Bishop.
Yes.
Like Ben Bishop, look, I think the world of the guy, right? And we're like, hey, but the first place that I saw him wrestle was at Disruptor.
Yes.
And we're all looking around going like, why is this guy not anywhere else?
That's right.
And then people start hearing about it, and then it just kind of spreads and it spreads and it spreads, and now the guy's everywhere. Like, guys booked to like the summertime, it feels like. Like, he's just that, he's so busy right
now. Yeah. So again, if you've not been out to a Disruptor show, hey, get your tickets early. And again, I say it all the time. Tannery Row Ale House, my favorite wrestling venue in the state of Georgia. They have really, really great food. Even like the kind of concession stand food is really, really good. So make sure you check them out. Again, we'll have more on Disruptor on the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight. Let's move on to our champions list. Our current champions, we're not going to cover all of them. I mean, I am literally scrolling. This is multiple pages in the show notes, which is why you need to become a patron. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet. Nick, one thing I've noticed is typically when we're going through these champions list, typically you got somebody like a Judas who's champion in multiple promotions. Last year you still got CT Keys. He was holding belts in multiple promotions. He's held multiple belts in the same promotions. As I look through, somebody we talked about last week who really had a great week, that's Najicism, who currently finds himself the Platinum Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, and then also the Classic City Heavyweight Champion. You've got Hunter James, spoiler alert, won the Coastal Empire Heavyweight Championship. That's not a bad way for somebody who was runner-up for Wrestler of the Year.
Meanwhile, he's holding the Southern Fried Classics title at the same time. Exactly.
That's right. I don't even know where to start here, Nick. There's just so many. Like,
listen, I'm with you. Like, look, we're not going to die. Like you said, it's literally like it's a page, or it's a page front and back.
Yeah.
So it's 2 pages of notes. I mean, of literally listing champions. By the way, I shared a post on my T.O. Nick McDaniel Facebook page where I was like, hey, look, a lot of people have asked. I have made comments to somebody about how you pin a profile, with the champions or next. I did the work for you. I literally made the post. All you would have to do is copy, paste it, insert your names and stuff in there, and then post it and pin it. And just every time, just when your poster changes, edit the picture, change the poster, and then edit it, and you can change the actual champions when a new champion's made, and that's it. Just update the information. You don't have to go digging for it, because nothing frustrates me more. Look, part of this is selfish. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm trying to compile this list of champions. I have a spreadsheet that keeps it up or whatever. Champions change all the time. It is so hard to go through because you're doing a good thing. I'm not saying you're not. Like, and I'm talking to promoters and people who handle the social media. You're posting a lot, but it takes me forever sometimes to dig and find your poster. Like, seriously?
Yes.
Like, why is it this difficult to find your poster? When is this? Because I have to find the bell time. I got to find the dates. I got to find the address. All of those things. Well, guess what? If I'm doing it, so are your fans.
Yes.
And then, like, the champions thing might not seem like a big thing, but it's kind of cool information to know.
Yeah. So here's what you need to do if you run a wrestling Facebook page. You need to go to your account and look at your page. What does your page look like when fans come to it? Because if you're just looking at it from kind of like the back end and what you post and all that, or you're just looking at the regular feed of your page, where you're seeing stuff from other people, you got to go in there and see what fans are seeing. You have to see it from their point of view, and you are going to see some of y'all are driving us crazy. Some of y'all, you have posted the same 5 pictures 5 days in a row, and when we go to find something, we have no idea what we're looking for.
I was as guilty as anybody, and I told myself I'm going to cut back. If I've shared your poster once, I might not share it every single time I see it. You know, like I was trying to get like share it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to share it when I first see it, and then I'll probably try to share it again like the week of the show or something like that to declutter mine. So I'm talking because of something I'm experiencing for myself. But yeah, just I was like, man, I couldn't make it any easier, man. It's right there on the page. Copy, paste it, put it up. And if somebody wants it, I'll copy and paste it, send it to you. I don't care.
Yeah, and some of y'all are about to get unfollowed because you keep tagging all your followers, and I keep getting these notifications. And if I want your notifications, I'll get them. And so I luckily I've got you and I both have our shoot accounts and our wrestling accounts. Yeah. And so I don't curate it as much. But yeah, you promotions, you got to do a better job. Fans want to pay to come see your wrestlers, to see your shows, and you're not making it any easier for them.
So back to the list. Let's get back to the list. I wanted to ask you some questions on this.
Okay.
Well, obviously, Carly Bravo's name is all over this, whether it's in the infantry or whether it's his own. We talked about he's, Carly 5 belts now, so, what he's kind of going by. But I was trying to just look, and what's cool so when you put this list together, this will be in the show notes. By the way, the show notes are not free. They're $1 level.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Why it's cool to have is you can kind of see a lot of okay, so these guys are sharing a ton of the same champions are in the multiple places or whatever. By the way, tip your cap and kudos. The Crusade, Grillo and Pat Roach picking up another set of tag belts. So now they're a multiple promotion tag team. It's just it does jump off the page. You can see who the people working, the same guys that have the same relationships with the same talents and stuff, because they end up in a lot of. And it's also cool to see a company like, looking for it. Where did I lose? Again, this is that many notes. It's really cool to look at a promotion. I got to upgrade Viral Pro because I still have a Buff and Fluff. I know they have vacated those, but when they get a new champion, I'll actually put it on. I'll change it. But Viral's got all names that I don't see on any other show. I mean, you're looking at Drew Hood, Billy Brash, and Erica Demi. I always butcher her name. But yeah, I mean, it's a whole different group of people. It's a super. Naja, multiple promotion champion. Is there anybody that kind of surprises you on this list? That's one of the questions I wanted to ask you.
That's an excellent. That's an excellent question. You've got somebody like Warden, who's the Georgia Premier champion. They're getting ready to come back. Okay. You got Kraken Wrestling, new promotion, a year in, and they've hitched their wagon to a guy named Justin Case. Justin Case I know he's wrestled other promotions, but he's their guy. And that's what we're seeing a little more of, maybe, is promotions deciding, like, hey, we don't care if you wrestle other places, but you are going to be like, we're investing in you. We're not going to
Yeah.
bring in the guy that's been a champion at 20 other
All
promotions.
right.
We're going to build on you.
And this is a positive, by the way. Thank you for saying that. They have one champion. They have a singles champion. That's it. They've been at it. Like I said, they're rolling through their first year. They're doing their thing. They're one guy, one champion. They don't have tag champions. I know they're getting there eventually. That'll be the eventual goal. Anyway, I've seen those belts. They're kind of cool. But then the other side of that is, if you have 5 titles on an indie show, Nick's preference, I'm not saying it as a fact. Nick's preference is you have too many titles.
Yes.
The only way I think that you can have more is if you're like IWTV's not Action's title, but it is a title that comes in. It's defended there.
Yes.
So that makes sense. I understand that. Which leads me to another conversation. If you want to pause, if you have a thought there, I'll pause.
I would say too, you real quick, you mentioned Kraken's belt. That thing is awesome. Phoenix Wrestling Experience. There's the Savannah River Brewing Company title. Beautiful belts, all custom made. And I know a lot of these custom belts are made by the same people. And then you see people there's one promotion in Georgia there's a promotion in South Carolina that literally uses the old NWA 10 pounds of gold replica as their heavyweight title. That's what I'm saying. In the day and age we live in, you can get a custom belt. And I took some pictures of a belt and I was just like, yeah, this is kind of underwhelming. This is supposed to be a big deal. And all you did was change
personalize your belts.
Yes.
Yeah, you can tell the companies that invested a little bit of money in that title. Because here's sidebar that I wasn't going to go on, but it's we could look at your title and go, you don't take your title serious, because nobody would take that because you didn't invest in that title yourself.
It's got a sticker on it, for goodness sakes.
Or something.
Yeah.
Because your titles, ready for this? Podcast people, this is what we call a segue. We go, speaking of taking your titles seriously, we were going to do a Patreon video, but we've got 7 minutes left in this show, at least. So Nick's going to fill the 7 minutes with your help here.
Okay.
Your titles should matter on your show.
Yes.
We talked about, because there can be too many titles in a promotion. That's my opinion. It's only my opinion. Tappedoutpod@gmail.com if you disagree. Because the tappedoutpod@gmail.com is going to really come into play here, what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
There are rare exceptions. And I mean rare exceptions where this is true. I don't understand the fascination. This is not, by the way, I'm not knocking the people that did it.
Yeah.
I just want, so if somebody would explain it to me, because I'm going to give you the reasons why I don't think it should happen.
Yeah.
There's a fascination as of late of by the way, call me hypocrite, because I ran a show where I defended 9 different promotions titles on it. Like that was our card, was literally built around a whole bunch of promotions coming together.
But you were like All-Star Weekend.
It was a super show, quote unquote, and I don't mean it because it was a great show. I just meant that's the kind of the format we were using.
Yes.
But like other promotions defending their titles on your show don't make sense for you, in my opinion, because your title should matter more than anything. The more this goes back to why I think there's too many. The more, by the way, I say this about WWE. I say it about AEW. They have too many titles, and the titles mean less because there's so many of them. There's guys who have belts that probably shouldn't have belts. And that's what, the more titles you kind of bring in, that's the problem. Well, even more so when you're bringing in somebody that's not yours. And I say that because why are you advertising another promotion at all? Like, oh, we're working together. Why? Because there's a couple things that are going to happen. I get it. Like, okay, everybody's going to go to the Coastal IWE thing. Well, Coastal doesn't have a women's division.
Right.
Right.
IWE doesn't have a women's division.
No, the IWE doesn't exist. So there's part of that. Look, I get it by name. They're saying it's still out there. They're on pause. No, you're not running. You're not a promotion right now. And with all due respect, if you're running shows, you're a promotion. If you're not, you're not. I mean, so do I get to say that Tapped Out, Hell Freezes Over is a show? Or a promote that runs? Because, by the way, I think I have to run one next year, maybe. I said if I made it to 10 years. So in like 16 months or whatever, when we get to there, exactly. Everybody goes, oh my God. We're gonna shut the podcast down like the month before, so I don't have to run another show. Anyway, back to my point. I understand that, but so not only in that scenario, I understood. Like, I think I tried to understand what was trying to be accomplished, but I still don't get it. Like, I would not promote a brand. By the way, I'm not playing nice in that area anyway. Why? Like, I just can't understand. It devalues your titles in general. That's kind of the harshest part of it. And then you're advertising a company that's, let's say they were still around. The only time it makes sense is if you were doing some kind of a invasion angle, or like right now, if you told me like, Matt Griffin strolling the action title out on a Southern Honor show, kind of makes sense.
Yes.
But just randomly popping, like I know Suge D's defending another one of the or whatever at another show, and I'm like, why? Because here's the other thing is, you're also giving your fan base, I'm not saying you're giving them too much credit, but you're putting too much emphasis on the fact that they even know who that is.
Yeah.
Like, what if they don't even know who IWE is? Or what if they don't know who, I know another promotion I was told there's another promotion that's probably going to happen on, and my response was, okay, why? If your fan base doesn't know who they are, you're confusing them. The worst thing you can do, in my opinion, the worst thing you can do is confuse your audience. The second they're lost and you have to explain something super deep, that's worse than them hating it, in my opinion. Because then they're just like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Let's go back again. Let me preface this by saying you and I thought all the matches at AWE were very good. There may have been 10 people in that building who cared about the unification of the Anarchy and the Georgia Wrestling Crown tag team titles and the singles titles.
I'll
Maybe
say 25.
25. No one else cared. No one else.
Pause. Fans.
Yeah. Fans.
Take all the wrestlers out of the equation, just the fans that were out there. Because I understand it, because there's the history of Anarchy and what that means, and I was a massive, Matt Hankins and Shane Marks fan and all that kind of stuff. But this is how deep you had to be to get it.
Yeah.
So I was like, when I looked at that room, you said 10, I was like, it's 25, and I could almost point to who they were, because I know the fans that are that diehard enough to get it, and I agree with you. Like, there was 25 out of 150.
But you had a promotion that is on the rise, AWE, unifying titles with a promotion that has run 3 shows in the last 2 years.
And haven't run one in a while. Yeah.
Have not run one in a while.
Was it last summer? It was last summer, wasn't it?
Because
I went. It was in Royston. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Y'all were at that one.
Yeah. So I think it was last summer. I mean, if I'm off, I apologize. I'm old and my memory fades on dates. But yes I think it was last summer.
But yeah, they're I just don't. One thing we've been talking about SCA. They have the Friday night title. Guess when the Friday night title is defended? Every Friday night. Guess what title's not defended every Friday night? The SCA heavyweight title. But you're always going to have that Friday night title. Tag team titles aren't defended every week because they run weekly. And I said this till I'm blue in the face, and this will be my final statement. If you're running 12 times a year, your title needs to be defended, I think, at least on 10 of those shows. If you're running 6 times a year, you better have a title match every single show. Right. Or your title doesn't matter. If you don't care enough about your title, how am I supposed to care about your title? So I feel better. Do you feel
Yeah,
better?
yeah. Well, the punchline of that was, if you value another promotions as much as your own titles, what does that say about your titles? Because then why should
Yes.
I show up to show yours? Because you're telling me theirs is on par with yours. So I'll just go over there and watch theirs. Especially, oh, heaven forbid, you do that. And what? Oh my Lord! What if they outshined your crap? What if that match outshined all of yours? You just
Yes.
told me, oh, I should be over there because the good wrestling's over there.
I I just realized I just remember this. I was gonna pay. I mentioned the show that ran in at the city gym. I was gonna pay for a match from another promotion for one of their titles to be defended on that show. I was gonna pay for the whole match. And my intention was not necessarily to make that show better. My intention was I'm gonna pay to have this match to promote the other show I was involved in, to kind of say, hey fans, there's other wrestling that's close nearby that you can hit up, that you can come to. And so that I was trying not to take eyeballs away from that show. But and that's the thing, is I didn't have that show's best interest in mind in
Right.
trying to get that match on there. Anyway, it was a busy week in Georgia, and I think we planted enough seeds to do about 27 Patreon episodes. And if you're going to come and watch that, you got to go to patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. Again, as Nick mentioned, $1 level gets you all these show notes. Holy cow. And you're going to get articles, regular articles. There's so many things in the hopper and technology we're using, which is awesome. Also, if you set up an account for free, you're going to get the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight every single week, where we talk in detail about the shows that happen and the shows that are coming up, and give some other analysis. We're going to tell you who won the week, who we think had the best week. But Nick, as we close out another outstanding edition of the Tapped In Indie Wrestling podcast, any final thoughts this week?
Yeah, man, you look, you pitched it a lot there. The Patreon is a huge thing right now. Patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. Look, we've got the writer writing the reviews now for Raw and Smackdown and NXT, and look, and I'd love for some feedback on those. If people like those, email us and let us know. Again, we always talk about, let us know what you like, tell us what you don't like, or whatever. All of that stuff matters. We're going to try to gear all the content towards you. You brought up the show notes. Like we did a show last week on the Tapped Out podcast. This week we're doing another one of that scenario. I really like the new format style. I hope people do as well. This week we are doing the biggest missed opportunities in wrestling. I've put it out there. We've already gotten some. Of course, the timeline's all because of our recording. But, we got some stuff in. We're putting them in there. But like last week we did the what ifs. There were like 3 or 4 scenarios that we had in the notes that we just couldn't get to. The show was already, like, we're not going to record 1.5 hour, 2-hour episodes. We're going to have enough content to make sure we can get through our hour, and then probably hour 10, hour 15, we're out, And so there's going to be a lot of those scenarios that are still in those notes. We'll try to come back to them, but it's good food for thought for the Patreon members to look at them and go like, yeah. We encourage you to look at those notes and send us, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts on the ones that we didn't get to cover. And I know there's some this week that we probably won't get to as well, because I've already put enough of them into the notes that it's like, dude, it's way more, especially on the weeks there's a lot of news to get to in front of the weekly topic and stuff. So I'm a big fan. Look, obviously I'm partial. Patreon, I think, is a good home for a lot of content that we've got going on.
Yes.
And, some of those things are going to change. Like somebody said, hey, you should probably put all the reviews at the $1 level. Don't give them all away free. And I'm like, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a thing that you would push back on, or would you say like, no, I get it. So it may be that. So anyway, absolutely, man. Join patreon.com. We'd love to have you there.
That's right. Thank you, fans, for all of your support. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing and hitting on those notifications and commenting and just talking to us and telling us what's going on in your neck of the woods. And maybe just think about it. If you're lucky and you go to a wrestling show and you're looking for your seat in a smoke-filled room, you'll look across the way and we'll see you at the matches.